Alright, so the latest Owl House episode was amazing, right, guys? Like, it gave us so much to talk about. But let's get the obvious exciting thing out of the way here. Lumity is canon. Yes, that's right. It became canon in this episode. They are updating. It was cute. It was adorable. It was everything I wanted. And I'll admit, when I first watched this episode, it was definitely the thing I focused on the most. But after rewatching this episode, there is so much more that we have to talk about, guys. Like, this episode was huge. But for a second, let's guess over how cute these guys are, right? Like, oh my god, these guys are adorable. Must protect that smile. But this episode is more important than we really think, actually. Much more. So the type of episode that this is actually very important. And for those who don't watch a lot of anime, you may not actually know, this is called an arcing episode. It's an episode used to tie up loose ends, either before the end of the season or before the end of the series. And this episode sort of signs and signatures that, like, the Owl House is coming to an end, and by the time we get to the final sequence of events, we wouldn't have time to wrap these up. So this episode's wrapping them up for us right now, and giving us the, like, sort of loose lore ends that we needed for this particular series. Now, aside from Lumity, the first thing I want to really tackle now that you know what an arcing episode is the part with King and the demons. So, this actually answered us quite a few questions about demons and the Boiling Owls. Like, now we know where they come from. They crawled from the Titan's blood or Titan's vial. So all the demons are essentially parasites from the Titan's body or vial. They're basically either they're from his blood and they're like anti diseases or like white blood cells, or they're actually parasites. Either way, they all were born from the Titan and they all crawled out. And that there are three different types. There is biped, bug, and beast. Now, King, of course, didn't fall under any of these classifications by the end of the episode, but I actually feel like that did give us some answers to what King actually is. Although more than that on a full theory video about King. This also gave us some more interesting things, like some of the students at Hexside are demons. Such as, the girl with the one eye, and even Tiny Nose. But something that's important that I think that a lot of people may have missed in this, is that there's a line in which Hooty says he's the only demon in the house. Probably. And then we have the Owl Beast over here next to the beast classification, so implying that Ida's curse may actually be demonic, which is later reinforced in this episode with a reference to an anime, and I'll explain that when we get to it. But I think that that's actually really cool, because this means that Ida's curse is probably demonic in nature, and not actually meant to be just a curse by itself. It's actually sentient, completely part of Ida at this point. Now, I did want to just kind of point this out because of the funny references in this scene. As you can see, when they're looking at traits, there's like the word Pocket Monster and Chinchilla. Pocket Monster being the Japanese name for Pokemon. There's Cartoon at 7. There's Super Cute. There's Cthulhu, which is, as you know, is where a lot of the nightmarish creatures from the Owl House come from. It's Lovecraftian. It's a Lovecraftian abomination, it's actually a Lovecraftian deity. Eldritch deity, but it's where a lot of the Owl House gets a lot of its art from. It's from Lovecraftian lore. It's basically all nightmare-fueled creatures. So I thought that was just a fun little thing to mention. But yeah, I do think I know where King is from, but I'm going to go more into that in a future theory video. But now let's get to the meat of the episode. Okay, for me, like, Lumity was great. Like, Lumity felt like the icing on top of the cake for this episode. But when we're talking about Prime Force, that was Ida's backstory. Okay, there was a lot about Ida that we still needed to be tied up, and a lot that we need to know. But when we're specifically paused on this frame, I want to explain to you guys something about the title of the episode, Knock Knock Knocking on Hooty's Door, and what this means. So Knock Knock Knocking on Hooty's Door is a clever tie-in title to a song called Knock Knock Knocking on Heaven's Door. And why is this important? It's because of what the song symbolizes, and what the song means in the episode. See, an arcing episode, like I told you guys, dictates that these are things that have to be tied up before the end of the series. And Knock Knock Knocking by Heaven's Door, which is by Bob Dylan, talks about basically a guy who's given up. He's at the end, and he knows that his time has come, and that he just wants to tie up loose ends and give up his regrets. The lyrics include, knocking on heaven's door, mama, take this gun away from me. I can't use it anymore. Take this badge from me. I can't hold it and the responsibilities anymore. I'm knock knock knocking on heaven's door. Meaning that this show is coming to an end, and this episode is meant to be our arcing plot to let us know, yeah, the end is coming. And when I realized that was very somber, because I also feel like the song mirrors sort of probably what Dana is feeling in her mind. Once she finishes the show, she puts her pen down. She can't hold it anymore. She's not the creator at that point. She's no longer working on the show. The show is coming to an end. And we actually do see a picture of Bob Dylan in the corner of this room holding his signature guitar and Rose, which I think is really cool. There's also a picture of what looks to be David Bowie, and also I'm going to guess Janis Joplin, because that does look like album art for Janis Joplin. So just quite a few musical references in this part of the episode. But yeah, that's actually where the title Knock Knock Knocking on Hootie's Door comes from. Knock Knock Knocking on Heaven's Door by Bob Dylan, which was later re-sung by Guns N' Roses. So if you want to look up the lyrics of that song and sort of feel the somber, sad vibe about the show coming to an end, and you want to just feel the same pain I felt, go ahead and go give it a listen. Alright, so now we get one of the pivotal questions answered. We get to see Ida's father. Now, I want to go ahead and debunk a theory that's been going around real quick. This is not Bellows, and Ida's dad is not Bellows. I've seen people say that it's possible that Ida's dad's Bellows because he has a ponytail. That is not the case. One, he's not missing an eye. Oops. He's not missing an eye. And two, when Lilith, in the episode where Lilith goes home, she says she's going to see mom and dad. Bellows doesn't leave the castle, okay? And Ida wasn't born at the castle. So I just want to go ahead and debunk that theory. But this does kind of show us what happened between Ida and her dad, and how the curse pretty much destroyed her relationship with her father and her mother. Her mother became obsessed with healing her and taking it away from her, and her father was injured by it, which probably made her distant from her dad, and her dad distant from her. So the curse to Ida has always been a burden ever since then. Never something she could accept, and it made her afraid of people. And that ties in perfectly when we get to this flashback with Rain. Now, this flashback is important. It's painful, but important, because we needed to know why Ida and Rain fell apart. We needed this explanation in order to go on with the series, because it's going to make when they reconnect at the end all the more impactful. We know that Ida was never herself around Rain and didn't trust her with her problems. Therefore, Rain felt like they didn't know who Ida was. So that's why Rain dumped Ida. And Ida once again blamed the curse. It was all the curse's fault that Ida couldn't get close to people. When in reality, Ida was the one pushing everyone away, not the curse. This is a huge character revelation for Ida, and it made this episode so amazing to me. I can't get over just how good this particular episode was. I love every second of it. But yeah, so that was an important flashback with Rain, and I think it was much needed to add to Rain's character in both their relationship to Ida. So yay! More fleshing out stories and more answered questions. Now we have this scene. I've been questioning myself about this scene. I believe this is Ida's sort of inevitable acceptance of her fate. So right here, Ida knows that she can't stop Bellows, or at least she feels like she can't. And this is sort of Ida's fears coming to life, that she'll be powerless against Bellows and the Day of Unity to stop it. Now, this character we now know is called the Collector, but does that mean it has nothing to do with Hecate? Actually, no. This character represents a few things within the episode. Hecate is often associated with death, as the moon is often associated with death, and the sun is often associated with life. The Collector could represent the Collector of Souls, which is a title that Hecate carried. And why Hecate captures Ida and says the phrase that she says, "Your time is up," is probably because Ida feels like no matter what she does, either the curse is going to kill her, or Bellows is going to be, win, and inevitably she'll die. There's nothing she can do. She's powerless. And this is once again her blaming the curse in a way. Also, if we want to see this as even more symbolic, this could also represent the end of the show, as in once we get to the end, it's over. Either way, the Collector appearing here could still possibly be Hecate, and it does represent the end. Which I think is really cool, because we actually have a name for this, like the Collector of Souls, which is one of Hecate's many titles. Now, Ida falling with her wings burning. Now, Ida's always been a prodigy. Ida's always believed that her natural talent and skills will carry her. But at this point, she doesn't have that natural talent that she's always had. She's having to try. She's having to work. She flew too hard depending on her natural talent and strength, and blamed her curses for all of her shortcomings. So it was like she was flying on wings of wax, just like Icarus. So that's why the symbolism here is that Ida is Icarus. Prideful, flying on power that actually didn't belong to her, that she didn't earn. She was just born with it. And that's why it melted away. Power that's not truly yours can be taken away in an instant. Power that you didn't earn. The difference between Ida and Lilith is that Ida was a natural prodigy, whereas Lilith had to train to get where she was. Now Ida's having to train too, and she's having to understand and come to terms that it wasn't the curse who destroyed her life. It was Ida who actually destroyed her life and just blamed the curse. She pushed everyone away instead of trying to let them help and try to understand the curse itself, because the curse has sentience. More than that on my Ida's curse video, also coming soon, because I believe I fully understand this curse now, to a T actually. Now on to the next. The curse being thrown in the trash. Now, I believe that this had a lot of symbolism to it. I'm not exactly sure if I'm right here, and I'm taking a wild guess, but I believe that this means that Ida will no longer be blaming the curse. Like, by throwing it in the trash, Ida has realized that blaming the curse and having it and saying it ruined her life was actually just Ida running away from her own problems, fears, and insecurities. That it wasn't the curse's fault. And I think that that might be what this scene means, and again, there could be more symbolism here, as this next scene is a complete reference to one of the most popular animes in history. So, Ida sitting here on the beach, looking out at the curse in the water. This is a scene from the end of Evangelion. And this isn't the first Evangelion reference in this show. I didn't take a screenshot of the other one, but when King is dancing in his music outfit, it's actually, the outfit he's wearing is the outfit that Asuka from Evangelion wore. And what this scene represents is the end. And in the show, Evangelion, the last scene in Evangelion represented the end, but also a new beginning for the world and the character Shinji. This is the end of the Ida who blamed her curse. This is the end of the Ida who ran away and didn't love people and let people love her back. No, this is a new Ida. This is Ida reborn. And this is her solace here on this beach. The Ida that we get after this will be an Ida who understands her shortcomings and that it's okay to rely on others. Then we have this beautiful scene. Now they're tied by the red string of faith, which obviously represents that this curse is part of Ida's soul. This curse, this demonic curse, probably represents all of Ida's insecurities. And the more she became insecure, the more powerful the curse became. And the more of her power it supposedly took. If she was just willing to accept it and accept her flaws, then the curse actually probably wouldn't have hurt her this bad. This scene is also very symbolic because it references another anime, Naruto. See, Naruto pretended most of his life that the demon that was trapped within him was a curse, and it was something that ruined his life. But once Naruto accepted the demon as part of him, he was able to share his power with it. This is Ida accepting the curse. This is her agreeing that you are part of me, and no matter what, we're in this together, and we need to protect the people we love. Let's work together. Let me borrow your power, and I'll let you borrow mine. This is very symbolic to the scene from Naruto, which, again, there are a lot of anime references in the Owl House. I mean, we wouldn't have Ida if it wasn't for a particular anime character. More on that on another video. I will be doing a video on all the anime references in the Owl House. But yeah, this is symbolic to Naruto becoming friends with Kurama, the nine-tailed fox demon within him. And when Naruto does take in Kurama, he gets a new form called Nine-Tailed Naruto, or Naruto Kurama mode, or Kurama Sage mode. And that's what Ida gets here. We get Harpy Ida. Ida with a fusion of the owl beast's power. She now has this new form, and by the way, I can't wait to cosplay this. She looks amazing. I love this design. I love everything about it. I can't wait. But yeah, that's basically the symbolism here, is that now her and the curse are one, and they're accepting each other, and they're sharing in each other's powers. Who knows what Ida can do in this form now? She may even have access to her magic again soon, as long as she keeps accepting the owl curse, or the owl beast curse. Whichever you want to call it. Finally, the juicy part. Okay, so there was a lot to this episode, right? There was so much. This shows how the door was constructed and the pieces you need. Now, some of these pieces can be found obviously in the Boiling Isles and their magic base, but a lot of this is actually based on mechanics from our world. We have Tesla coils, we have surge coils. There's a lot of technology mixed in with this magic door between worlds. But this isn't the one I want to focus on the most. This is what I want to focus on. So, for the longest time, we assumed that the Boiling Isles and Earth were two dimensions coexisting next to each other on a single dimensional axis. But no. Actually, the Owl House is actually part of a paradoxical dimension. So we have to use paradox theory to apply to the Owl House, which means between the Boiling Isles and Earth, there is a pocket dimension, a microspace, in which we don't know what's there. We do not know what's in that micro dimension, that cylinder between Earth and the Boiling Isles. Now, we can assume that the door, the reason it doesn't take you to this micro dimension is because it has a physical counterpart both on Earth and in the Boiling Isles. Obviously, the Boiling Isles counterpart is this, but its Earth counterpart is probably that house that we see that Luce goes into. And as long as it has those two connecting counterparts, it doesn't have to pass through this pocket space. But now that one's been destroyed, I assume that connection's been somewhat broken, so even if Luce rebuilds it, she'll probably still have to go through that pocket space, and I can't wait to find out what is in this paradoxical dimension, this micro-reality between worlds. This also may explain Creepy Luz a bit more. I'm just taking a wild guess here, but when you go through a paradox space, normally they have another version of you that has to exist within the other space, and if there isn't one, the paradox space will create a version of you, which may mean that Creepy Luz was made by this in-between world, not by anyone like Belos or anyone in the world. It's very possible. Then there's the spider, which is a lot of us would just assume is the prototype for Belos' staff, but I've actually, of course I have to take it a step further because my goblin theory brain won't let me rest until I have some kind of physical connection. So I started looking for Owl House lore, Celtic, Nordic, Latin, like any of the lore that the Owl House is known to use, Judaic, and the symbolism between spiders. And I believe I know what this spider may represent in like a real, sort of a real world counterpart. So, we'll get to that in a second. I believe this is based on Erihandred. I'm probably butchering that name of that Celtic goddess, sorry. But Erihandred is known for weaving between dimensions and spaces. They make webs that connect the worlds and that connect the skies and the stars. More instantly, though, they're also associated with spiders, which is cool because that's what a lot of Weaver of Fates are. It also could be a reference to Arachnid too, but she's less known for weaving dimensions together and more known for being cursed. But they're also Eriandroid is also related to a specific sacred bird. The goddess shapeshifted into a large owl, which enabled her to see into the dark depths of the human soul. So that's actually a pretty interesting connection to the Owl House already, because that sort of ties it back to Eda too. Also, their colors are known to be silver and white, which is sort of the colors that apply to Eda's hair. And again, the connection might be with the spider. Now let's talk about the obvious last piece here, the letter from King's dad. I have a full video, like I said, that I'm planning to do on King, but this was Hootie's one mistake in the episode. Like, God Hootie gave us Lumity, so I guess we can forgive him for eating this letter, right? But this letter obviously is not going to be revealed until much later in the series, probably close to the end. We might actually not even get to see what the letter said. It might just be at one point where that guy comes back and is like, "Hey, King Clawthorn, did you not read my letter?" And then he's like, "What letter?" And then Hootie's like, "Oh, okay, my bad." But this letter, I think, ties into King's backstory and why he doesn't fall into any of the subclasses that relate to the other demons. But again, more on that on the video. So, overall, this episode was phenomenal, okay? For an arcing episode, this episode was one of the best arcing episodes I've ever seen. They're not commonly used in cartoons, but in a lore-heavy, story-driven cartoon like this, you have to tie together these loose ends before you get to the end, because there's a chance that you won't have time to address these when you're going through your final battle and you're trying to wrap up the story. So this episode was perfect. In fact, any of the problems I had with Season 2's pacing, this episode actually fixed, because it tied up any of the missing pieces that we had. And I love that. Dana, you are a brilliant writer. You're brilliant and you're great. And yes, this does mean that the Owl House is coming to an end. The fact that it has an arcing episode, meaning we're winding down to the end of the series, but we should be happy. It's okay to feel sad, but we should also be happy. It's a somber feeling, because something isn't beautiful because it lasts forever. It's beautiful because it existed in the first place. And that's what the Owl House will be remembered for. Dana's amazing writing, the representation, the characters, the story, and the world. We won't ever forget it, even once the show is over. But that's about all I had to say about this episode. It was amazing, and Ashi signing out.